Hey folks, and welcome to another video of mine. In my previous video, Kratos versus the Mayan Gods Part 1, I discussed a theory where I particularly focused on the stolen treasures quest, as you can see on the screen, and highlighted why I believe that will tie into the future installment of the God of War series. Today's video wraps up that theory of mine by shedding light on the Mayan mythology itself and also the mystery and role of Jormungandr. Let's start with our good old Yormi. And I would particularly like to highlight a tweet from Cory Barlog, which talks about the possibility of solving a few mysteries still left out in God of War Ragnarok. Let me read from this specific tweet. But in the 2018 game, Kratos, Atreus and Freya discuss Yormi when riding the gondola before going to Alfheim. She talks about how Yormi just appears one day and no one knows why or how. In Ragnarok, we close that loop, connecting it to Loki. Ethan responds to that tweet from Cory and he says, personally I disagree. The story is good, sure, don't get me wrong, but it's just so rushed at the end. And the actual closing of Ragnarok was just messy. Plus the whole not closing the time loop with Jormungandr properly. Love the game, but yeah, this needed to be a trilogy in my opinion. Now, Cory Barlog, very interestingly, replies back to this tweet and he says, but how he got back in time? Well, that's a story for another game. Well, this really leaves us hanging because this is so exciting, interesting, curious, and also it has us scratching our heads. It leaves us with a lot of questions. Some of these questions are important and they also are critical to the video today. And I'm going to talk about that by starting off with this question. Which Jormungandr do we see at the end of God of War Ragnarok? In case you're wondering, hey, are there any other Yormis out there or is there just this one? Well, I have a theory behind this and hear me out, please. Now, there are two possibilities that I'm going to talk about. Possibility A and B. A, the one who has just been brought to life by Atreus in God of War Ragnarok. So this is the Jormungandr whom we see that has been brought to life by Atreus. So he takes the spirit of the soul of a giant and puts it in this snake-like creature, or rather a snake exactly. And then that snake balloons out of proportion, grows really fast, or does he? Now that brings me to point number 2 or question number 2, which is the Jormungandr from the 2018 game. Is this the Jormungandr that Kratos sees during the events of Ragnarok? Now, there are two things that I want to discuss here, apart from point A and B. I know it's kind of a duality thing going on here, but let me talk about what are those two possibilities. One, where Jormungandr grows really, really slowly. The second possibility is where he grows really fast. Now, in case you're wondering, why is this even relevant? Well, in my theory, it is. So just hear me out and I'll finally try to bring it all together towards the end. And I appreciate your patience with this one. The first point, the first possibility of slow growth. Now, this Yormi is somewhere out there and it's still growing and will one day battle Thor. The second possibility where Yormi has grown really, really fast. Now, this is the Jormungandr that appears in the events of God of War Ragnarok and is the one that is battling Thor. So, this is in fact a question that even Kratos might be asking himself, or in fact even Atreus. Not exactly a question, but he makes a statement that this beast looks different. Let me just quickly play that clip so that you can hear Kratos as well speaking about Jormungandr from God of War Ragnarok.
Looks like the giant's made it after all.
The snake looks different.
He is different. But when I was away, never mind, later.
So as you can see, Kratos clearly says that the snake looks different. Now, what does this mean? This means that this is not the same Jormungandr that Kratos and Atreus first met in the Lake of Nine in God of War 2018. In fact, Kratos acknowledges this and he says that this is a different looking Yormi, a different looking snake. Now, there is this possibility that the snake where Atreus had put the spirit of the giant grew really fast And therefore, it aligns with this theory of mine where the beast has grown really fast. And Kratos also sees this, acknowledges it. And this is the one which appears at God of War Ragnarok. Or there is a first possibility that we need to look at, which is slow growth. And I personally would lean more towards this first possibility rather than sticking with the second possibility of fast growth. And I'm going to bring it all together, like I said, towards the end of the video. Now, slow growth, if the beast has grown slowly, then obviously this cannot be the Jormungandr that Kratos sees at the end of God of War Ragnarok, because this means the beast is still growing and he's not become like this giant creature yet. What does this mean? This is probably the most interesting bit of this video, so hear me out. I know that there are a lot of videos, a lot of Reddit posts, a lot of comments speaking about the possibility of two Jormungandrs being in the timeline. But I'm going to top that off by telling you that there may be not just one or two, but in fact 3 Jormungandrs in this particular timeline now, where we have God of War Ragnarok. Who are these 3 Jormungandrs? Now, the first one is the new born-again Jormi, where Atreus has put the spirit of the giant, and this happens in Ironwood, which means it has happened in Jotunheim. The second Jormungandr is the younger Jormungandr that we see towards the end of God of War Ragnarok, and Kratos acknowledges that this snake is different. Now, this snake is obviously in Asgard. Now, please note that there is also an older Jormungandr that is still lying in the Lake of Nine, because obviously it's not the same beast that Kratos sees at the end of Ragnarok, which means that there is possibly 3 Jormungandrs in this particular timeline. And I'm going to talk about the timeline bit as well in a very short bit. Again, my focus is to bring it all together towards the end of the video, so kindly stick around till the end. Now, I have another theory. In fact, I'm going to top this up. This video becomes even more interesting now, because I personally believe, and I'm sticking with this possibility of slow growth, not the fast growth. Why not the fast growth? Because although it aligns really well, meaning that, okay, he grew really fast, and that's the beast that we saw towards the end of Ragnarok. And we see, well, Thor hits him, sends him back in time, creating a sort of a time loop. I mean, everything fits together beautifully. But here's the thing. If you slow this footage down of where Thor and Jormungandr are battling it out, there are a few weird things that I kind of spotted, and I want to share that with you. And in fact, I'm going to say this. I know it's really going to sound absurd, but I think it's not Thor who sends Jormungandr back in time, but Jormungandr himself or itself, as you would call it, is capable of time travel. Now, why am I saying this? Just look at this clip in slow motion, and then I am gonna explain why I think that is the case. Now, please note that when you hit a creature, look at Thor hitting Jormungandr now. When you hit a creature, the creature from the impact, or the particles from the impact, will go out. Now, all the particles here are obviously naturally going out, except for these 2 sparks. Now, these 2 yellow sparks, as you can see on screen, they are popping up from nowhere, and instead of moving away from Jormungandr, they move towards Jormungandr, and Jormungandr vanishes. Now, please note that Jormungandr has not even taken a big fall. Now, maybe the game developers, they made this animation, they didn't think too much about it. But if you take this theory of mine into the picture, then I think then Jormungandr is itself capable of time travel, and it's not Kratos, it's not Thor who is sending him back in time. Because think about it. If you really look at the battle between Thor and Kratos as well, now that, to me personally, it looks more intense on screen than the battle between Jormungandr and Thor. And if there was anyone or anything that could splinter the timeline, that could be the battle between Thor and Kratos. They in fact created a lightning bolt right in the middle of Midgard in the Lake of Nine. In fact, a similar lightning bolt is also created when Faye battles Thor in Vanaheim. So, to me personally, if anybody was to splinter the timeline, it would have been this battle between Thor and Kratos, not the battle between Jormungandr and Thor. And another thing that I want to talk about is, please note that Jormungandr is a giant. Atreus has put the spirit of a giant in Jormungandr. And what are giants capable of doing? Here is just this one small example. And I'm going to play this clip. Please listen to what Angerboda tells Kratos.
Time to go? Go where exactly?
You didn't exit?
How?
It's giant stuff. Okay, follow me, quickly.
So interestingly, when they're looking for an exit, look at what Angerboda tells Kratos. It's giant stuff. I know it's kind of cheesy, it may be very casual, and it may even be lazy. But what does this imply? It simply implies that giants are capable of realm travel. And they don't need an external device, they don't need any third-party help to travel between realms. I'm going to go back to this particular slide. I don't know if you noticed this, but the newborn Yormi was in Jotunheim. The one who battles Thor is in Asgard, and the one in the Lake of Nine is in Midgard. So how did Jormungandr get from Jotunheim to Asgard to Midgard? In fact, he even has fragments of things from Alfheim in his stomach from the first God of War 2018 game. This clearly means that Jormungandr is capable of realm travel. It's giant stuff. Now, if he's capable of realm travel, could this also mean that being a giant and having giant stuff, he perhaps is also capable of time travel? Well, I'm just throwing that question out there, and I look forward to your comments. It'll be really interesting to talk about this particular theory, because I think that it is the case where Jormungandr is capable of time travel, and it's not Thor who has actually sent him back in time. Now, I also want to talk about 3 timelines here. The first timeline in this case does not exist in our game universe, where there is no Kratos, obviously, because this is the original timeline where Ragnarok happened without the intervention of our rugged protagonist. Odin and Thor and even Jormungandr die after Ragnarok. In fact, this is the original mythology where Odin does not kill Thor. In fact, Thor is killed by Jormungandr because he's poisoned by Jormungandr, and he takes something like 9 steps or something and collapses and dies. Fenrir, the wolf, kills Odin, not Kratos. And if you go back to the previous clip where Angerboda comes out of this portal, we have Fenrir, who has just been limited to being this puppy dog-like creature now. So think about it, all right? You have a really, you could say, awesome creature who is even capable of taking down Odin, the almighty Odin, in the original mythology. So the entire mythology is kind of gone for a toss. I have no complaints about it. They have taken a new direction. I kind of appreciate it. They've tried to tell their own story, and I like it. But in this game, there are only 2 timelines which could have existed. Timeline number 1, where Kratos dies. Now, this is the timeline where Kratos dies. Atreus sides with Odin as per the future predicted on the murals. And I'm just going to show you that mural as well. Here's that one where, in this particular timeline, instead of Odin lying in Atreus' hands or lap, it was Kratos, and Atreus puts the spirit of Kratos into that ball-like thing. You know, where they put the spirit of the giants. And Atreus sides with Odin in this particular timeline. But obviously, according to our game, we already know that in the game, the timeline is where during the events of Ragnarok, Thor is killed by Odin, Atreus sides with Kratos, and Odin dies and Kratos lives. So, I know I've explained a lot of things, and I'm going to bring it all together now, and I'm also going to talk about why Jormungandr plays such a crucial role, or perhaps could, let me correct myself, could play a crucial role. But I want to move away from Jormungandr now and focus on Kratos, our protagonist, and even talk about something as weird as his beard. I know it's rhyming, funny, yeah? But yeah, so let's talk about Kratos' beard because that also ties into where this mythology might be going next. Please note that the Mayans and the Aztecs, they were people who had this clean-shaven look. In the midst of this clean-shaven look, a person with a beard will definitely stand out. In fact, so much so that they have an entire temple dedicated to a bearded man. So there is a temple of the bearded man that surrounds the Great Ball Court. And I'm not making this up. There is actually this temple because now I've moved away from the game universe over to the Mayan mythology. So this temple gets its name from a strange bearded man who heads the scene. Quetzalcoatl or Kukulcan appears as man, bird, serpent, with his face emerging from the jaws of a serpent with a forked tongue and feathered body. Now please note that Kratos is not alone. In fact, he's accompanied by Freya. Freya has the Valkyrie's wings. And what are wings? They are feathered. Yeah. So this is interesting. I'll move one step forward and even show you a picture here of this one particular quest from 2018, the 2018 game, where Kratos and Atreus, they go into the jaws of Jormungandr and enter the belly of the beast. Now, on the right hand side, there is an image from one of the temples in the Mayan compound where there is the face of Quetzalcoatl or Kukulcan emerging from the serpent. So I'll just say this, what goes in comes out. So if there are creatures who are going into the belly of the beast and if they're supposed to be coming out, would it not look like this statue that we're seeing in the Mayan compound? And please note, I'm going to come back to this one, man, bird, serpent. So there is a man, there is a bird because of Freya being his companion, and there is a serpent, Jormungandr. Interesting. I'm going to move over to another book called The Maya and Their Neighbors, and I'm just going to read a small little paragraph from this book, the one that I've highlighted in gray. And this is interesting because here you have the historical profile of Kukulcan. So I'm going to read this extract. Identify two called Quetzalcoatl. By the way, Quetzalcoatl is another name for Kukulcan. Kukulcan is the Mayan one and Quetzalcoatl is the Aztec one. So jaguar's face painting and beard in Codex Tonundae are typical attributes of the god Quetzalcoatl, while his white, red, striped body paint, now it can't get any more specific, while his white, red, striped body paint is typical of Mixcoatl and of the Venus deity called, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce that, I'm just going to say Sea Arcatel. The names Quetzalcoatl and Sea Arcatel are used frequently by Nahuatl sources in referring to the historical Quetzalcoatl. I'm going to move over to the next slide now, and I'm going to take an extract from this very popular book called The Fingerprints of the Gods. Graham Hancock needs no introduction. In fact, he very recently had this show on Netflix called Ancient Apocalypse, and there is an episode there which in an animated way shows you all about Quetzalcoatl. So I'm just going to read this second paragraph from this gray highlighted area, and this is interesting, okay? It says, all in all, I felt Morley was right in looking for a factual historical background behind the Mayan and Mexican myths. What the traditions seem to indicate was that the bearded, pale-skinned foreigner, please note, bearded, pale-skinned. Does Kratos not have pale skin? Of course he does. Is he not bearded? Yes, he is in the 2018 game and even in Ragnarok. The bearded, pale-skinned foreigner called Quetzalcoatl or Kukulcan or whatever, because he has many names. If you look at the first paragraph, he's also known as Gukumats, Wotan, Itzamna. So there are many names to the same creature. Had been not just one person, but probably several people who had come from the same place and had belonged to the same distinctively non-Indian ethnic type, which is bearded and white-skinned, etc. So this is interesting as well. I just thought I'll share these extracts because it's probably just mere coincidence, or maybe the developers or the people who had control of the narrative element of the game, they also had gone to the same sources where they had seen this in the Mayan mythology, a bearded, white-paled man with white, red stripes. I mean, the profile perfectly fits with the profile of our rugged protagonist, Kratos. And it's interesting, because when I started this video, part 1 of this video, I started with this particular section where Kratos is looking at a mural which has him standing and there are people worshipping him. There is a creature behind Kratos as well. I have an interesting theory about that. If you want to hear that out, let me know in the comment section as well. I know who that particular creature is, or at least I have a theory behind it, a very good theory. And the reason why I kind of took a screenshot of this and I want to share this with you is because look at the legs of Kratos, or rather his right leg in this case. There is a serpent right next to his leg, which means that Kratos is going to ride a serpent and arrive at this new place, wherever this is. Does it not all match up with Jormungandr? So this is where I'm bringing this all together. Why Jormungandr was important to this discussion at the start of this video? Because he's a serpent. He's the serpent in this case. So Jormungandr, the serpent, is with Kratos, and he has to do with him traveling to this new realm, because he can move from realm to realm. We have clearly seen that now. He's gone from Jotunheim to Midgard to Asgard to Alfheim. So there is a very strong possibility that Jormungandr is the one who now takes Kratos and this other creature behind, or other character behind him. I know who that is. Let me know again in the comment section. So the serpent takes Kratos to this new realm. And in fact, so much so, am I so sure about this particular theory that even when Jormungandr is seen in Asgard, look at how Mimir, just listen to how Mimir reacts to this.
Jormungandr!
A welcome sight, but he didn't follow us from Midgard. Curious. He'll keep Thor busy at least.
But he didn't follow us from Midgard. So he was in Midgard. And then he came to Asgard. And please note that if he was in Midgard, my slow growth theory works perfectly fine. If he was in Midgard, then that means that there are 3 Jormungandrs in this timeline, because if he was from Midgard, he's the older Jormungandr, not this younger Jormungandr. So this is quite interesting, in fact, and this is just my theory. I strongly believe that they're gonna use Jormungandr not just in the next installment, but they could actually use Jormungandr in the installment beyond that as well. Because if you go to my previous video, there is this mention of the Ankh from the Egyptians, and the Ankh is this, you could say, this artifact where Mimir talks about an ancient civilization which is technologically advanced. So if Jormungandr is capable of time travel, then he could even be crucial to traveling to this ancient or distant time, this distant past. I'm just throwing it out there. And let me know what you think in the comment section. But hey, that's my theory about this whole thing, about how Jormungandr will play a crucial role and why Kratos is gonna face off against the Mayan gods next. In fact, he may even be known as a Mayan god called Kukulcan or Quetzalcoatl from the Aztecs. So that's it for this video, folks. Let me know your thoughts and your comments. If you've liked the content of this video, I would greatly appreciate it if you could hit that like and subscribe button, and also that bell icon in case you want to get notified with all my latest videos. Now with that said, it's a wrap for this one, and I'll see you in my next video. Until that time, I'll say take care, stay safe, and may God bless you all.